Talk about a blast to the past, eh? Today we are talking about a topic that we had made a video about 3 years ago. But we're revisiting it because it was recently brought up on Sportsnet 650. Now what I wanted to do was bring your attention to this clip on the Sportsnet 650 Twitter page. Welcome to The Gong Show. It's a crossover episode between Canucks Talk, so Jamie Dodd and Thomas Drance, and Donnie and Dolly. So you literally have Dodd, Drance, Dalibor, and Donnie all on the screen at the same time, talking on the same radio show. It's a pretty big mess at first in this clip because Dalibor is trying to explain something, but all the guys are just kind of laughing because it takes a while to get to the point of the answer, which is kind of, classic Dalibor style. Definitely not going to fault him for that. It was hilarious content and very good entertainment. But the reason we're bringing this clip up is because Rick Dalibor on the program talks about Vasili Podkolzin, Vancouver Canucks forward, Vancouver Canucks young forward, and a guy who is still, let's just say, on the cusp of his breakout. He hasn't done that yet. Sure, Podkolzin is 22 years old, but this is a 6'1", 190 left-handed right-wing guy who is supposed to be a workhorse. Last year, he had 7 points, 39 games played in the NHL. He had 18 points in 28 games in the AHL. And in the preseason, the guy didn't show off well enough, and he got sent down to Abbotsford as a result. But still, Podkolzin is a guy on this team. He's a player that needs to prove himself more. And Rick Dalibor, on this recent segment on the crossover, The Gong Show, brings up a comment made about Vasili Podkolzin a few years ago by one Igor Larionov, who had coached Podkolzin back in Russia. Now, in order to get the comments underway, we're actually not going to use this clip. I just wanted to use this clip from September 27th to introduce the topic. We're going back into the time machine here and looking at an old Dalibor tweet from January of 2020, wherein Larionov made these specific comments. Russian assistant coach Igor Larionov will be on Sakaris and Price today on 1040 from Russia. This is what he said about Vasili Podkolzin. He's a power forward who gives 100%, a hard worker. He reminds me of a young Mark Messier. He has a bright future and is a great prospect for Vancouver. Now, back when these comments were made, Podkolzin was only 18 years old, and we actually did make a video about this, that the Podkolzin-Messier comparisons were made. You could see the thumbnail, you could see Mark Messier as the Stanley Cup champion in 1994. I want to redo that thumbnail and make it look better, but Podkolzin is a really interesting player who has not exhibited any sort of a Mark Messier-like curve in his development just yet. And Rick Dalibor, the reason this is brought up again on Sportsnet 650 is because Dalibor says, yeah, when I look at Podkolzin, I don't see Messier. We had these comments made, oh, Podkolzin is like Messier, but now it's 2023, we're looking at this guy, he does not play like that Mark Messier did in the 80s and the 90s. In fact, it's mentioned in the clip that Podkolzin looks like a guy who lacks confidence and needs a little bit of a boost. And so what I wanted to do in this video was talk about Podkolzin, talk about Mark Messier, talk about the links, why these guys could be seen in the same vein, and what exactly separates them so far. In fact, let's start out with Mark Messier because I know all Canucks fans would love to hear about this. Mark Messier was not really the big brute force guy that was dominating the NHL in the 70s and the 80s. He wasn't 6'6", he was only 6'1", he's only 205. But cut from the same cloth, Mark Messier did post up multiple 100-plus penalty minute seasons in the NHL. He definitely wasn't clean as a whistle, and I think a lot of Canucks fans who remember watching Messier with the Rangers in '94 could attest to that, especially when the Stanley Cup Finals happened in that Game 6 with Trevor Linden. But Mark Messier was a multi-time 100-point guy in the NHL. He's one of the top scorers the NHL has ever seen, one of the best players of all time, and a power forward that just would not back down from any sort of a physical altercation. Podkolzin is a guy that I don't really know has that same level of, what's the right word that I want to use here? Unhingedness? Like, Mark Messier was just an absolute animal when he wanted to be. And for Podkolzin, you saw earlier in his career, especially in Russia, which is kind of why he was ranked to go so high in the 2019 draft in the first place, that Podkolzin had these bulldog-like qualities to his game, where he almost had that same level of unhinge, where he could just go into the corners, fight it out with guys, battle it out, win puck battles. set up his teammates with a nice pass or walk in and snipe it himself. There was a really unique blend of skill, talent, and physical edge that Podkolzin had back when he was draft eligible. And as he proceeded throughout his draft career, there were many moments in lower levels of Russian play where you started to see those skills. Oh yeah, look at Podkolzin, he's going into the boards, fighting for the puck again. Oh yeah, look at Podkolzin, he's forechecking like crazy again. And then when he made his NHL debut, you could see sort of those similar traits bring themselves up in his game. Yeah, Podkolzin is forechecking hard. Yeah, Podkolzin is not gliding out there. He's always moving his feet. He's always getting that first step. He is always working hard. But when he has the puck, this is a guy that really just defers to making a little bit less than we've been used to seeing him pull off in the past. I mean, in earlier stages of play, in the Ivan Hlinka in 2018, Podkolzin was a guy that was dangling through defenses. He was driving to the front of the net, just kind of dancing with the puck through everybody. But recently, in the past few seasons of NHL play, and maybe you could debate even in this preseason, Podkolzin has been kind of just chipping the puck in more, not really doing the crazy nice plays. He's just making safer plays here and there. And sure, there are some preseason games we have seen where Podkolzin has started to take a little bit more initiative and tried to drive the puck a little bit more into the middle than prior. But this is sort of what Dalibor is alluding to. There's some sort of a mental block that is holding Podkolzin back from being that player that we thought he could be. And I'm not even going to say that Podkolzin, if he completely lets himself go and he becomes the best version of himself, I'm not even going to say that Podkolzin is going to be Mark Messier. Like, Podkolzin is probably not going to get 100 points in his career, in one season at least. He's probably not going to get 1,800 total NHL points. He's not going to be a Stanley Cup winning captain on multiple teams, most likely. Like, sure, Podkolzin's a good player, but not everybody can be Mark freaking Messier. But for Pods, if he could start to bring out that unhinge that really made Messier a step above everybody else in the 90s and the 80s, if Podkolzin can do that, then okay, I'm all for it. And of course, I understand how different this kind of commentary is because we're not talking about Messier as the damned captain of the Canucks like he was in the late 90s, early 2000s. But when Messier was actually good, when he was a beast in the NHL, yeah, there was no stopping this guy. Sure, Canucks fans hate the guy's guts now because of what he did to this team in that time frame, but you can't deny he was a really good hockey player when he was at his best. Never mind the fact that he screwed over Trevor Linden multiple times, defeated the Canucks in the finals in '94, and then ruined the team when he was the captain here. Mark Messier was an intriguing player that you may not ever see again. So for Igor Larionov 3 years ago to make that comparison and say, yeah, Podkolzin reminds me of a young Messier, like, to say that, there's a lot of weight in that sentiment, and I think a lot of Canucks fans might have forgotten about that as the years have gone on, but Rick Dalibor definitely did not, which is why he brought it up on the Donnie and Dolly Canucks Talk Sportsnet 650 crossover show. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel about the idea of Podkolzin having this sort of Mark Messier-esque skill set? What do you think is the ceiling for Podkolzin? I said it myself, I don't think the guy's going to get a 100-point year. I think if we're being realistic, he could probably max out at, let's say, 20 goals, 30 assists, 50 points, maybe? Like, that's if everything goes right. If everything continues from here on out into 2025, 2027, 2029, in the best ways that they can. I don't think Podkolzin is ever going to get that 80 or 90 point ceiling like we initially thought he could be able to achieve back when he was draft eligible, but things change over the years, right? You could look at the videos we made back in this time frame, 2020, 2019, and say, yeah, Podkolzin might have this super sky-high ceiling, but now, a few years later, we understand that there are a few things that are holding him back from exhibiting that type of progression. So, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel about Podkolzin and Mark Messier being said in the same sentence? I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.